The Disney Cruise Line is totally different from any other Disney destination. You plan for it differently, you dine differently, you even start and end the vacation in a different way, and there are several things that I wish I had known before I took my first, second, and even third Disney cruise. Today I have compiled all of my lessons learned so that your Disney cruise is the best possible and you don't make the mistakes I did. Let's jump right in with the online check-in. Don't forget to do it. Luckily I read about this one before our first Disney cruise, but I've seen the lines and I've seen those mountains of paperwork that you have to fill out right there in the terminal. You definitely want to avoid it. Check in online in advance. It will save you a ton of headache. If you don't, not only will you have a mountain of paperwork to tackle, but you'll be one of the last ones to board the ship, and you don't want that. You want to be on as early as possible, so check in advance. Before your booking window opens for those excursions and other activities on board, be sure to discuss them with your traveling party. The exact day that you can register for these excursions and other activities is dependent on your Castaway Club status. Your status is determined by the number of cruises that you've taken with Disney. I've done a whole video about the Castaway Club, Disney's loyalty program. You can find it right there at the I button. As soon as that window opens for you, you don't want to be deciding right then and making phone calls trying to find out what your brother or sister or mom or dad or kids want to do. Instead, you want to know right in advance so you can book it immediately because they fill up super fast. I don't want to forget about the concierge guests. If you're staying concierge on the Disney Cruise Line, your booking window opens extra early. That will be noted in your confirmation email. On the day of your booking window, registration begins at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I confirmed this with Disney. That is still the time, so be at your computer ready to go at 7 a.m. to get those activities that you want. This is especially true on those themed Disney cruises like the Marvel and Star Wars Days at Sea. My sister Michelle and I discussed in advance who we wanted to meet and when we wanted to meet them. As soon as that window opened, I booked them and we got them. One lesson that my family learned the hard way was the difference between late dining and early dining. If you have kids in your traveling party or you just like to get to sleep a little bit earlier, I recommend the early dining. It's a little bit louder, but it'll definitely be worth it. If you don't have young ones in your traveling party and you don't mind staying up a little bit later, I cannot recommend late dining highly enough. It's quieter and it feels far less rushed, at least to me, because when you're on board, usually every night, there are exceptions to this, but usually there are two shows playing in the Walt Disney Theater, the earlier one and the later one. If you have the later dining, you see the earlier show, and then you go to dinner, and then that's the end of the night. So you don't have to rush off to anything else after the meal. You can take your time and relax. There's no fireworks afterwards, no show afterwards. Relax during and after your meal. Highly recommend late dining. Something else that I learned on board the Disney cruise is the difference between the rainforest rooms. One of the greatest deals on board the Disney Cruise Line is the one-day pass to the rainforest room, and I definitely recommend it, especially on the Dream and the Fantasy. You know this already, but I am totally spoiled by the rainforest room in the Dream and the Fantasy. When I think about the rainforest room in the Wonder and the Magic, I just say, but that's just my opinion. I didn't know till recently that you can take a tour and decide if you want to get that one-day pass to the rainforest room while you're on board. You do not have to book that pass in advance. They have several available while you're sailing. One lesson that I've learned from parents in our Disney family is to register your kids for those kids clubs as soon as you step on board to avoid a huge line. I've seen that line before. You definitely want to register as early as possible. One lesson that I learned rather recently is that if you want free Wi-Fi on board the Disney cruise, make sure you book it on that first day. I made a video recently about how to get free Wi-Fi on board the Disney cruise. You can find that video linked right there at the I button. The bigger question here, do you really need the Wi-Fi? If you need it for work, okay. Otherwise, maybe just disconnect. Luckily, this next tip is not something I had to learn the hard way. Make sure you download the Disney Cruise Line app on your phone in advance of the cruise. I consider the Disney Cruise Line app almost essential while you're on board. Not only do you use it to communicate with your friends and family who are on board with you, but you also get a full view of the navigator for the day, and you can heart your favorite items, and then 15 minutes before the start time, your phone will buzz to remind you to go to these things. Genius. By the way, I feel like the messenger function in the Disney Cruise Line app is far superior than the Wave phones. That's just my opinion, but just carrying around one thing is better than carrying around two. Another lesson that I learned rather recently, book Palo as early as possible, and if you can't, you can get a reservation reservation on board. I made an entire video all about getting those Palo reservations on board. You can find it right there at the I button. While you're on board, you may notice that Disney has very small cups that you can use to refill for soda and water, but going back and forth to your table to refill several times can definitely get annoying. So another recommendation, consider bringing some kind of water bottle. If you decide to use one, you do need to use one of the Disney cups to fill the water bottle for sanitary reasons, but then you'll have a water bottle totally full of your favorite drink while you're on board without having to make as many trips. The reason why you don't see me walking around the Disney cruise with my water bottle is because I like to have at least one hand free to look at my phone or open a door, because in my other hand, I'm taking you with me as we're vlogging together. Another important tip, be sure to get to the port early, somewhere between about 10:30 and 11:30 I think is best. It's true that onboarding does not usually happen until about noon or 1 p.m., but getting there early will allow you to take pictures with your favorite characters who are standing around, and depending on when you checked in online, you might even get an earlier number so you can get on board earlier and start enjoying the magic. For Pirate Night, you will see pirates dressed up to the level of Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. That is how far the costumes go, simply because it looks great as you're walking around. You get to interact with the characters, get some special memories in these costumes. Don't be afraid to go in costume. In terms of formal night, guests go all out when it comes to their attire. I've seen tuxedos, ballroom gowns, and a question you might be asking, Michael, did you feel a little bit underdressed in just that blue collared shirt and the black slacks? I wouldn't say underdressed, but I'm definitely going to dress it up just a little bit more on future formal nights. One lesson that I learned on board the Disney Wonder with my brother is not to spoil your appetite. It is so tempting to just go over to Pete's Boiler Bites anytime. It's all included. You can get the chicken nuggets, the burger, the shawarma, whatever you want, and then by the time dinner gets there, you're totally full. Don't make that mistake. Leave room for dinner. You're going to be happy you did. I guess I can call it a lesson learned now, but every single cruise that I've been on, I have forgotten to put a bathing suit in my carry-on. I end up saying to myself, I'm not going to want that bathing suit until a little bit later, probably not first thing, right? Don't make that mistake. Pack a bathing suit in your carry-on just in case, because your luggage takes much longer to process through. It's going to be maybe later at night before your luggage gets there, and you won't get a chance to go into the jacuzzi or the pool first thing. Pack it with you. If you don't use it, that's fine. It's a small piece of clothing, but at least you'll have it. I remember on the cruise with my brother, his luggage got there, he was able to change and get into the pool, and I was still left waiting. Don't make that mistake. Believe it or not, if you're at dinner and you're looking at your menu and you don't see anything that really pops out at you, but you've had other meals on other days that you really enjoyed, you can request anything you want for dinner. It doesn't need to be from the menu. You can also order as much as you want. If you want 2 appetizers and 3 entrees and 4 different desserts to split among everyone, your server is more than happy to bring it to you. The staterooms on board the Disney Cruise Line are incredible, but one thing they could definitely use more of are those outlets. And if you find yourself using a lot of power on board, like certain people who like to film everywhere they go, make sure you bring something with you to help you charge everything. The Disney Cruise Line does not allow extension cords or power strips on board for safety reasons, but they do allow USB splitters, so you can actually charge several things at the same time that take USB through one plug. For example, my phone and my dad's phone and all 3 of my different battery packs, so I'm charging all my batteries for my camera through one plug. Super helpful. You've seen me wear it on board and a Castaway Key. I definitely recommend you bring a waterproof watch. I can't tell you how important it is to have some kind of waterproof watch or timekeeping device with you. I know that cell phones can keep the time. You can look at your phone and see the time, but just imagine for a moment, I'm a Castaway Key. I'm out in the middle of the water on one of those kind of floating tubes, which is a lot of fun. I'm relaxing. I have no idea what time it is, but I know I have to be back at the ship at a certain time. Instead of getting out of the water, going to find my phone and checking the time or asking someone else for the time, I just look at my wrist and have this watch. It's a relatively cheap watch. I just put it on my wrist and I don't have to worry about any timekeeping. It's all right here. One very important financial lesson learned, be sure that you are ready to pay those tips after the cruise is over. They have a card on file. They will charge to the credit card, so just know that that expense is coming. Be ready for it in advance of your cruise. One very important tip for larger families who are splitting up staterooms like my family did on our very first Disney cruise, make sure you know that the photo package only includes the guests in the one room. This is something that I really feel like Disney should change. When my family were on the cruise together, we have several great pictures together, several of just the guys, but none of just the girls in just the girls' room. So we're wondering what happened to those photos. Sure enough, they're not included because they're not in that stateroom with us. Only the people in the staterooms get their photos. So we got ones together, but none of the girls by themselves. This was really disappointing, and I really hope Disney looks at this. I know Disney works with a third-party company to have the photos taken, and they do a great job taking those photos, but this is something that they should definitely look into. For you to have to pay double the cost simply because your family's taking up 2 different staterooms, that's not right. Disney, something to really fix. Until Disney fixes this problem, and I hope they fix it soon, the only solution that I can think of is instead of taking those individual photos, take more group photos with everyone together. The reason that this works is because your stateroom is linked to the photo package, so if your face is in that photo, you get the photo, no matter who else is in there with you. Disney tries to make it to every port of call that they have scheduled, but sometimes Mother Nature does not agree. It happened on a recent adventure for me, and when that happens, just make sure you have a backup plan for the day. I'm not talking about activities on board or excursions booked through Disney. Disney will take care of all of that, but if you have any third-party excursions booked, make sure you have a cancellation policy with them and you know what to do in the event that you can't make it. Last but not least, I want to address a question that I've received several times all about disembarkation on that last day. On the last night of your adventure, you have the option to allow your stateroom host or hostess to take your luggage from outside your room, it's got to be outside, through basically their version of the Magical Express to meet you right before customs when you make it back on shore. This has to be done before 10:30 p.m. on that last night. It's an extremely convenient service, but that being said, if you have an earlier flight the next day, you may want to keep your luggage with you. The reason is, it can take a little bit of time for them to get your luggage from the ship onto the shore. You'll see a lot of other guests lining up in advance with their luggage before the ship actually makes it to the port, simply because they have an earlier flight, or they have to get somewhere, or they're just ready to go. For me, I like the convenience. I don't mind waiting on board the Disney cruise. No, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. So that's what I use. You can either use it or not, totally up to you. On that final morning, of course, they do serve breakfast, and I recommend getting up just a little bit early because they ask that all guests be off the ship by 9:30 in the morning. This will allow them to clean up the ship for the next round of guests who are coming on board. Those are my lessons learned from my first, second, and third Disney cruise. If you've been on several Disney cruises before and you have another lesson learned, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being a part of the magic with me. Until next time, have a magical day.